Thank you, everybody. Heidi, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. It's great to be here in Maine. See, I was saying earlier that I am the person that I'm sure you resent because I come here for 3 weeks and then I disappear. Totally get that, but there is no better place than Maine in the summer. And it's an extraordinary state with amazing people that, honestly, the ancestry of this state is uniquely American. As you know, going back 100, 150 years ago, this is not an easy state to live in. And, they always say that Maine has hard people. And I say, I love that Maine has hard people because you are tough, you are gritty, and you've built a life here in a way that I just want to let you know that you're not forgotten. A lot of you guys say that Maine is the forgotten state, but you're not forgotten. And I think part of this is that the rest of the country needs to know that Maine is not just going to roll over and just become a third world dumping ground, and that the best days for Maine are ahead. So I want to talk about a couple things, then we'll do some questions, and we're going to have some fun. The first of which is, as you know, I visit college campuses, so you guys don't have to, and there's something very special happening with the youth of this country. And Heidi, I love what you were saying. Young men in this country are the most conservative they have been in 50 years, and they're only becoming more and more right-wing. It's happening in dramatic numbers. Young ladies are a work in progress, right? You got work in progress. But I'll tell you, young men, they are sick of the toxic feminism that has infected our culture. We want to let men be men again in America. And one thing I know that is a big sticking point here in this country and the state is the blurring of lines between male-female distinctions. No men in female sports, no men in female locker rooms. That should be a no-brainer. And this is what's so important. One of the reasons why Maine has changed is two simultaneous things. The first of which is hyper-elite coastal education in colleges, and the second of which is immigration. I'll get to that in a second. But first, Maine has so many people that, first of all, some of your universities here are very overrated, very expensive, and to the left of Stalingrad. Would that be fair to say? And it's so important because the muscular class, those of you that wake up before the sun comes up, and those of you that shower before work and shower after work, you send your kids to go to a K through 12 school saying, hey, go to college so that you can get a good job. They go to college and they learn to hate the country, hate themselves, believe there is no God, and come back and probably change their gender. And you're like, well, who exactly are you? And one of the reasons why Maine has changed so much is that Maine continues to be a hard-working, gritty state, but it's increasingly a college-educated state that is an upper suburb of New Hampshire and Boston. And you are a great people. Well, and we're going to talk about that because they're trying to make you no longer a people. They're trying to change what it means to be a Mainer. We're going to talk about that in a second. And so this influx of hyper-college educated people in Portland, you all know the type. They're the type that has, in this house, we believe in signs. I've spent the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, all throughout Acadia National Park, amazing. And you're driving through some of those streets near the College of Atlantic, and they have these huge resist signs. Resist, resist. Like, what am I resisting? A closed border? I'm resisting the fact that we finally have mass deportations, or you're resisting the fact that Donald Trump has ended 5 wars in the last couple of months. This college-educated idea pathogen that has infected so many in the state, I think it's the true virus that continues in this country, which starts on our college campuses but doesn't stay in our college campus. It infects the rest of the entire world. And that's where so many people say, but where has common sense gone? You go to college to lose common sense, to get a credential, to go in debt a bunch of money, to borrow money you do not have, to study things that do not matter, to find jobs that do not exist. Maine does not need more sociology majors. Maine does not need more people that are studying, as I said earlier, North African lesbian poetry. That's not going to make Maine great again. We need electricians, we need carpenters, we need welders, we need entrepreneurs, we need police officers, we need lobstermen. Enough of the purple-haired jihadis that are walking around downtown Portland. Like, what? Who are you? And, you know, people say that's insensitive. Just wait for the second part of my discussion, okay? You'll see. I say what you believe, and then you can vote on whether you have me back. But I know you all feel this because this state is being colonized. This state is being colonized first by an out-of-state college elite that is driving up your housing prices and that are building new housing developments so they can have a nice condo in July because Boston gets a little too humid for them. And then, of course, it's being driven up by another population. By the way, you could blame me. I'm here for, 3 weeks every summer. I love it. And then I leave. But if we fix this state, I might stay longer. We'll see. So, but the Trump movement has been amazing to witness because Donald Trump said things that were true when everybody attacked him. And he repeatedly said it over the course of a decade. And Maine reminds me of where the nation was 10 years ago. You guys are almost behind the nation in some ways. Like the whole nation has really made a rightward turn, but this state has not really been able to figure itself out yet. But I think it will. And this now goes to the second part of my conversation. So the first part is that you have wokeism infecting every major institution. Men and female sports, men and females locker rooms. Oh yeah, men can give birth. We're going to shut you up if you believe otherwise. I mean, all of the worst things that you could teach a young person, right? That, I'm a super anti-racist. Like, yeah, okay, sure. I'm going to prove it by bringing a Somali in. Okay. And so you're being colonized by foreign ideas, leftism, and then you guys, not in this room, but your leaders, who should all be run out of office, made a traitorous decision to not just be colonized by foreign ideas, but foreigners themselves. And here is the part that you all know it's happening. You get called mean and nasty names for saying out loud, but there's something wrong with the fact that Maine continues to import people from the third world and calls it progress. Lewiston is unrecognizable. South Portland is unrecognizable. I say this as someone who's been coming here over the last 10 years. The fact that half of the kids in some Portland schools, half do not speak English and they speak a different language. And let's talk about the types of immigrants we're bringing in, because there are some people here that immigrated to this country. I met them earlier. If you assimilate to our country, we will bring you on the team. However, immigration without assimilation is an invasion. And Maine is being invaded. And my contention to you is take a page off of Donald Trump's book and do not seek to offend something. But if and when you see something that is true, be unafraid to say it out loud. It does not matter if the local newspaper is going to call you names. For example, Somali immigrants are not making the state better. They're not making you happier. They're not making Portland safer. I'm sure there's individually some really wonderful ones that you call neighbors and friends. But the macro project, everybody, we know what's happening here. Look at Minneapolis. They're about to elect Omar Fatah as the mayor of Minneapolis. Is Islam a main value? Understand this, that a homeland is not a hotel. This homeland has to have a connection to your ancestry. For those of you where your ancestors fought and died and gave so much for this state, to all of a sudden have your leaders give up and be like, well, we're a 98% white state, therefore we must be racist, and we want to bring it down to a 91% white state. I'm sorry, wait a second. Do you know how you know they're full of crap? Because they all vacation here. They go to Kennebunkport. They go to Northeast Harbor. They go to Bar Harbor. Oh, wait, let me get this straight. So you're okay, you elite master of the universe, that calls you racist. You're okay vacationing in Kennebunkport, calling the native population racist and terrible, and then leaving 9 months out of the year, and they have to stick with the Somalis in their public schools. Screw you, that's evil, actually. And that's disgusting. And it is deteriorating the fabric of your state. And so, what is not, I feel as if there is this pent-up demand because there's like this over-political correctness, and that's not who you guys are as Mainers. You guys tell it like it is. You guys are hard people. This is not like waspy Hamptons, okay? Where everyone, you kind of like have this like passive-aggressive political correctness. You know what I mean? Like, oh, yes, you know, the local city's looking a lot different. You guys are Mainers. Tell it like it is. Get to the heart of the matter. Why are you living under this coastal left-wing paradigm, which is suicide by immigration? And if you don't believe me, then, I'm sure you do, but if the media who's covering this, I hope they write this up, because you know what they'll say? Charlie Kirk's racist, xenophobic. That doesn't work anymore. 2016 wants their talking points back. This is 2025. Just calling me a racist doesn't mean I'm going to stop saying it. And when you look at what ends up happening, the scams that are being run, the pay for phone scams in Lewiston, the drug operations by the Chinese nationals, the Dominicans that are running, you say to yourself, wait, what are we really doing here? And it's so clear that they have contempt for you, the native population of Maine. They have contempt for so many of you, and they want to replace you. And they're trying to replace you by mass migration. And it's time for you to say, hell no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to put up with that. Maine is for Mainers. And if you are coming to this state and you're trying to bring your third world values into our home, it's not xenophobic to say, you're not allowed into my home. You lock your doors for a reason. In fact, Maine used to be a place where you didn't have to lock your doors, right? And some people now, all of a sudden, I hear stories like you have to all of a sudden call a locksmith the first time in the family's generation, where all of a sudden you sleep a little bit less good at night because people all throughout Bangor are breaking into homes to go pay off their drug debt, to go steal stuff. So it has a massive increase in crime. And then it's a cycle. Because then what happens? Your most precious thing you have in the state is what? Your young people. And your young people say, forget this. I'm going to Atlanta. I'm going to Miami. And how many, I'm sure you all know, bright, aspirational, wonderful young people that you wished would have stayed here in Maine. They don't always come back. That's not true. They come back in the summer. Exactly. Or they come back changed. It's very simple. This is not Republican or Democrat. You want to create a Maine where a high schooler wants to build a life here and stay here. You want to build a Maine where they're not going to graduate high school and flee to go to better opportunity. They'll realize they live in heaven on earth, and they want to fight like heck to preserve it and get married and have children. You want to stop the outward exodus of this state, which is happening. You know, you have the oldest state in the country. I learned this earlier. It's like 41 years old. It's because so many young people leave. And so the breakdown of what we are seeing, it's happening in real time, but it can be reversed. And it can be reversed, of course, and it's so simple, by having political leaders that are willing enough to speak about what is happening regardless of the cost in front of them. And I look at, South Portland, Maine, what was her name, Delacqua or something? She was the mayor. And she might be a super sweet person and very charitable and nice, but that's not Maine. That's something else. And you can't go bring in a foreign population of a war-torn third world country and bring them in and even worse, have no expectation for assimilation. That's the other problem with our immigration problem. It's bad enough that we're bringing in people that have third world values and have no idea what's going on in the first world, and they just sign up for government benefits like crazy. And your Governor Mills, by the way, I think is a traitor to this state and should be run out of the governor's mansion. She's a disaster. And I don't say that lightly. She expanded all the government benefits for third worlders to make it even more attractive. So for those of you that are paying taxes, you guys are suckers. You are paying for someone that has no birthright here. Now, I mean, one thing if they all came and they said, you know what, we're not going to take any government benefits. That's not what's happening, and you know that's not what's happening. The way immigration used to work in this country is we're going to learn the language, we're going to pledge fealty to America, we're going to, quote unquote, burn the boats, we're not going to send money home. This is our home, this is our place, please welcome me, and I'm going to earn your trust. That's how it used to be 100 years ago. I'm going to earn your trust. I'm going to work really hard so that you will end up liking me because you'll see my character. And guess what? We used to expect that out of our immigrants. We used to say, you know what, if you want to come here, it's a high bar. We have now brought the entire bar down. And why is this happening? And this is why these are two related. Both of these colonization efforts of Maine are tied together because one allows the other. Because white liberals, deep down, hate themselves. And white liberals who hate themselves, they don't believe in Jesus. By the way, the most important thing I can tell you today is accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. It's the most important thing you can do in your life. And Maine church rates are not where they need to be. You guys know that. This is one of the lowest churched states in the country, so we got to improve that. So you have white liberals who hate themselves. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in any afterlife. And so therefore, what is their theology? Because everybody has a theology. Everybody does, including self-described atheists. So white liberals in suburban Portland, and you know who I'm talking, you know the type I'm talking about. Yeah, you listen to my show. That's great. I call them the Subaru gang. That's exactly right. You know what no offense if you drive a Subaru, but you should probably make a different vehicular choice. You know what I do call them, I use all sorts of fun code. I call them the Subaru gang. And in some ways, you have to just analyze this from the outside. They are deeply broken because they do not believe in a higher power. So their theology, the modern world theology, is that God is just a guess, and the worst thing you can do is judge, and the worst sin you can commit is being a racist. Therefore, if they believe the worst sin that you can commit is a racist, and they believe that being white itself is a racist, what then do you do religiously? You go bring in a bunch of foreigners because you're atoning for your sin. And that's exactly what's happening throughout the state. You have a bunch of unchurched, godless white liberals that went to college and they have a bunch of money and they're super upset with their life. And they're like, how do I find myself in the cosmos? I know, we're going to go import 50,000 people from Mogadishu and I'll feel better about it. And like diversity is our strength. And guess what? Many of the people that make these decisions are inoculated or they are immune from any of the consequences of the decisions they make. They are always they're always partitioned off. It's you that has to send your kids to school that is unrecognizable. And then even more, so you have the third worldification, then on top of it, they're like, well, you know, there is no such thing as objective truth. Everybody has their own truth. So if someone says that they're a boy, or says they're a girl, so be it. And then you see the trans thing infected. And this state is the meeting point of all of that. But they made a big mistake with Maine, is that you guys are not California. You're not Massachusetts. And you are one candidate away. You are one spark plug away of the state getting lit on fire. Because the demographics of this state are still hardworking, common sense people. Yes, you have your psycho, self-hating liberals on the side. That's not my experience. The majority of this are normal Mainers. Yeah, they're a little hard, they're a little rough. Table manners, you know, but honestly, I like it because it's not fake. It's real. And we need more of that. It's real. And so we're at this moment where a fuse could be lit. And that is why, the final thing I'll say, and then we'll do some questions, that's why they have to call you these names that we call thought-terminating cliches. Look what has happened when Trump started talking about mass immigration. Other people were allowed to talk about it. Other eyes were opened. Look what's happened in the United Kingdom. And I don't want to see Maine go the way of the UK. Because I'll tell you right now, do I think America will go the way of the UK? No. I think Donald Trump's doing an amazing job. We have the border secure, deportations. But I think Maine could. I'm just being honest. I think that your leaders are so self-hating, so self-loathing, have such contempt for you. They hate your history. I mean, the involvement of Mainers in the American Civil War, in the Revolutionary War, it's heroic. And you do not have a people, as was said earlier, if you don't have a history. Your ancestry is not something that you just study. Your ancestry points to your future. And that is what your country is all about, not just a colony. And that's the place I want to be part of. And that's why Maine sticks out like a sore thumb on the entire national project in a good way. Because I think they've picked a fight with the wrong state. And no one's really put this together yet. But if you've been here for more than a couple generations, You should be a little bitter that someone that has never been here can just cut in line and get a bunch of government benefits that you pay for, lie about it, scam it, commit crimes, and not report it to the police. That should bother you because they haven't done any of the work to be here. And it's a violation of the social compact and the social contract. And so that's where the thought police comes in, because they know how powerful what I'm saying is, right? They know that what I'm saying right now would resonate with like 90% of Mainers. That's why they have to make sure no one says it. They're going to call you racist. They're going to pick it outside of your home. They're going to follow you in the streets. They're going to do whatever you have to do. But I don't think that's going to work once we hit a critical mass in this state. And it all ties into things are getting more expensive. Well, I wonder why things are getting more expensive. You're buying, retired Air Force bases or military bases. We were talking about earlier. All of a sudden, you build 300 housing units, and every single one of them is Somalis. And by the way, I'm not against any person individually. What I will say, though, is that you haven't really demonstrated that you can make Somalia great. So I'm a little bit, let's just say, not won over. I'm a little bit unconvinced you can make Portland great if you can't make Mogadishu great. And if you want to call me a name for saying that, it's true. It is a third world nation. And when you have a third world nation and you throw them into a first world nation, they don't really know how to deal with it. Oh, free stuff? Sure, I'll take free stuff. Yeah. Delayed gratification built the West, and Somalia has not believed. It's a terribly war-torn country, and you don't have to take my word for it. Ilhan Omar is what you are getting. Ilhan Omar is not obviously from this state, but she is part of the entire Somali project. And that comes with the final thing. What is it that we are fighting for? We should tell our young people, we should challenge our young people. Hey, instead of taking the easy way and getting some dumb finance job in New York City where you can stare at a screen all day long, stay in Maine and be part of a new founding generation to get married and have children. Go do a hard and challenging thing that the history books will remember you as one that reversed this downward trend. Because you guys know Maine is in a spiral right now, largely supported by tourism, federal money, and a couple big employers, right? And you're in that kind of spiral, but a generation that says, no, we want to live here, and we want to build a future here. But it starts with a complete and total wholesale cultural change. I'll close with this, and then we'll do some questions. The country at large right now is, I think, finally it's got its mojo back. There's a lot of things that we need to do better, a lot of things that I think we're on pace for. I love the no tax on tips. I love the no tax on overtime. I love the new ICE investment that we get from President Donald Trump. I love the fact that President Trump finally stands up for the United States. Some of these trade deals, by the way, benefit Maine. They're going to buy our lobster now in the European Union. Very important. It's a big deal. So there's a lot of good happening. But we have to look at this even bigger. That there is a concerted effort happening in every Western country, and especially here in Maine, to displace the native population, make you feel bad about it if you do not cheerlead it every single step of the way, silence you if you dare notice it, and then you basically have to become the underclass. In Deuteronomy 28, one of the last things that Moses said before God's chosen people enter the promised land, he said, be careful who you allow into the nation of Israel, into the promised land, because the foreigners will soon become your masters. Everybody, I think every Mainer should commit that verse to memory and have the courage and the conviction to speak out, which is obviously a third world colonization project of this beautiful state. Thank you guys so much, and let's do some questions. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Charlie. That was very well taken. And it's interesting because I was reading a Press Herald article condemning a candidate for governor for commenting on a Somali refugee turned politician who has said herself that she should be putting Somalia first. I can't help but take a shot at the Press Herald, our competition here in the state. But thank you, everybody, for submitting questions as well. So I'll go through some of these. The first one, I think, is something you've talked about before. Generally, what is going on with Jeff Epstein, the Trump administration, Pam Bondi?
Oh, boy. Well, look, I will say I'm very encouraged that the Trump administration is moving to unseal the grand jury testimony documents, that they're moving to unseal stuff in Florida and in New York. I got it. I hear you. I'm also very encouraged that Ghislaine Maxwell will be speaking. I don't think she should get a pardon. But look, I said it previously. I said I want to see what's in there. The Trump administration, right? It's their prerogative, their directive to not just look into this, but to act how they see fit. But let me take a step back and explain why people care about this, if that's okay, because there's been some confusion. Like, Charlie, why do you talk about it? Why do you care about it? Well, the reason why regular American people care about the Epstein story and why people are so animated about this, it's not the fact that Jeffrey Epstein was a child pedophile, which does matter. Instead, he is a proxy and he is a fill-in for a ruling class that is never held accountable, while every single one of you have to live by the rules, and there is an untouchable class that is able to be exempt from all of that. People care about the Epstein story because he is a fill-in also for the same economic populism that drove the Trump movement. It feels as if that no matter what the ruling class does, whatever the oligarchy does, they get away with it. And so here you have a pedophile that was probably working for one, if not many, intel agencies, right? Definitely was working for foreign intelligence, maybe Mossad, maybe Saudi, maybe MI, whatever, maybe CIA. Doesn't matter as much, but probably a freelancer. But most importantly, this guy got unusually rich, was totally untouchable, and did stuff that was unspeakable. But also, the people around him did unspeakable things, right? Bill Clinton, and who else? Now, I will say this.
George Mitchell.
Yeah, and no, yes, and I'm going to defend Donald Trump on this, because some people say, oh, he's in the Epstein files. Like, yeah, he probably is, but not in a criminal way. Understand, Donald Trump kicked Jeffrey Epstein out of his club for being a total perv. You know, Donald Trump lived as a socialite in Manhattan and Mar-a-Lago many years prior. They had a huge falling out. So I don't for a second think that Donald Trump was into that kind of weird sex stuff that Jeffrey Epstein was in. Donald Trump definitely has some documented sins over the last couple of decades. That is not one of them, and I think we should push back against anyone that is insinuating on that. I think it's total garbage. The final thing I will say, though, President Trump did say this, which is that I want to see all the information, and I think everyone should. However, we should be cautious that the people that were in the prior administration might have done some things like the Wall Street Journal piece that we saw of some fake stuff against Donald Trump that could be used against him. So I think we should proceed with some caution in that way. But honestly, I look at the Epstein story as a fill-in of a ruling class, of a governing elite that is never held accountable, that has never been prosecuted, and I want to learn as much about it as I possibly can.
So in your recent podcast with Tucker Carlson, which everybody should go listen to that as well, you were critical of conservatives in this kind of knee-jerk embrace of capitalism, free markets, almost a worship of corporations as if they can do no wrong. I thought that was a very enlightened, poignant criticism. Are there other things that you think are shibboleths for conservatives that are holding us back? Are there other areas where you think conservatives should maybe stop defending certain practices or certain elements of the ideology that have been around since the Reagan era, for example?
I'll think of two. The first of which is there is a push by some in the Republican Party to stop talking about social issues. Now, I know in Maine this might be verboten because this state seems to be socially liberal and like extremely pro-abortion, at least Susan Collins votes that way. I don't know. I actually defend Susan Collins a lot, and I think you guys should vote for her. I say that non-sarcastically because I actually think it's much better than a Democrat, and I get in trouble for defending her, and so I want that to be on the record. And she has been there when we need her for high-stakes votes, but that's a whole separate. And there's a lot of vote trading there. And do I agree with everything she says? Of course not. But she represents Maine, right, not Mississippi, and that you have to remember that. Now, I think, though, that we as conservatives, we have to understand that what we are at our core is that we want big families and small government, and the other side want big government and really small families, or no families at all. If we do not support a family policy, which is marriage between a man and a woman, pro-life policies against all this trans stuff, and make it easier to have kids, then what are we actually as conservatives? And I think we need to realize that we have a declining fertility rate, we have a declining marriage rate. I can tell you, as someone who's trying my best to reverse the fertility rate here in the West, We have 2 kids, and we're not slowing down. Having children is the most important thing.
It's a great way to brag about your sex life.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I just want to reiterate, though, that when we're trying to present a future for our children, it's not about making money. Not being poor is really great. Not having debt is really great. Once you reach a certain threshold, that's not what gets you happiness. It's not. In fact, super rich people tend to be very miserable and very paranoid because they're like always thinking they're going to lose their money. So not being poor is awesome. Not being debt is great. Being able to pay things for cash is amazing. But the most precious thing is to have children. And that's why we are here, to have children. And so I think we need to talk about that more. And the second of which, again, I don't know how much we want to talk about this, but I would say that I think Donald Trump has done a great service on his recalibration of the trade policies, that we need to put American workers first, and shipping jobs overseas through NAFTA or through Chinese trade deals has been a disaster for the people of this country.
Well, this next question kind of relates to that one. Somebody asks, what should a college-age woman pursue if her goal is to someday be a wife and a mother as an alternative to an expensive degree and still have the skills to support themselves while single and waiting for love?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm one of the few people that has a good answer to this because I'm willing to say what everyone is thinking on this, which is this. Which first and foremost, that if the most important thing or the more important thing is family over career, then you need to say that and state it and write it down. Now, if career is more important than family for you, you have the agency to do that. I think you might want to second guess that a little bit and think about it and pray about it. But some women end up being career driven and that's what they want to do and they live a fulfilled life. Most women cannot or do not want to do that deep down. Most women have a biological urge and need to get married and have children. So therefore, if you want to meet a good man, where to go? Well, I encourage you to go to an SEC school and get an MRS degree. And an MRS degree, it's Mrs. degree, if you know, MRS. And again, people say, oh, that's so mean of you. Say, wait a second. If we all agree children's the most important thing, getting married is a covenant in front of God, wouldn't you prioritize that above becoming the CEO of a shoe company? And what better place to meet a husband than at the University of Alabama, where there's a lot of good-looking young Christian men that are at prime dating age looking for a wife. And you think I'm kidding, but what we've done is we've said, oh, no, college is not for that. And now our marriage rates are low, our birth rate is low, and we have a whole generation, the least married generation in American history. So what I think we should do, we should celebrate young ladies to go to college to get skills, but also to find a husband. What could be more important than that? By the way, that's what happened in the 1960s and 70s and 80s. Ladies would go to college, they would find a husband, and it worked. The fertility rate was going up, or at least was stable. I'm not kidding in that way, but the secondary point, and I'll say just with this, if you want to get skills, then you could also get that while you're in college. What we have to do, though, is we have to push for marriage to be younger. We are getting married too late. When you get married too late, birth rates go down. Everybody, we are at extinction levels in this country, and you are at mass extinction levels in this state. Like horrifyingly low replacement numbers of births, right? Am I correct, Stephen?
Last year there were 33 births per day in Maine in a state of 1.4 million.
That's catastrophically low.
46% off replacement rate. And that includes, by the way, the Somali population.
Yeah, so that is so catastrophically low that we need to have a whole reconsideration of what matters. And so all I'm saying is that if family matters, prioritize it early, find a husband. And I joke around at the SEC school because, look, if you go to University of Maine, half the guys are gay and they're not going to date you. And
the UMO,
am I right?
They're nodding along.
Of course, yeah. And no, literally at Brown University, they said that 45% of the men were like bisexual or gay. So it might not be half, like 30%, right? Ish. Pretty close. These are University of Maine, yeah, pretty close. So go to University of Georgia, find your future husband, and then come back to Maine with your husband and have lots of children.
So this question is kind of related. What did you think about the American Eagle ad with Sydney Sweeney?
Well, it's not Nazi propaganda, but I will say, look, I found nothing wrong with it. I will say the one thing I would caution us Christians, that ad is definitely more lustful than we should probably support. Is it Nazi propaganda? Of course not. Is it funny? Yes. You know, do some people have good genes, both literally and yes. But I will say, though, I think Ali B. Stuckey had a wonderful statement on this, which is that we should caution ourselves, saying that was probably too lustful for what we would consider to be like an ideal ad. I tend to agree. I think that there's too much skin being shown in movies, TV shows, social media. I think we should bring back piety. But like, I'm not trying to be the moral police here. I found nothing necessarily wrong with it. Instead, the left's reaction to it. So they called it Nazi propaganda. And I was like, okay, do you want to know why young men are moving to the right? You are calling the supermodel of their generation, their Brooke Shields, right? Their Kathy Ireland, if you guys are kind of going back in time, right? You know, their Farrah Fawcett, okay? Right? Imagine someone calling Farrah Fawcett a Nazi propagandist. You would like revolt. You would go to the streets. So you want it every time that they call Sydney Sweeney a Nazi, another young man registers as a Republican.
So this question relates to a subject you touched on earlier, Maine being one of the least churched states. But even with that, there's a lack of turnout. There's Christian voter apathy in the state of Maine. So how does the church community, the Christian community in a state like Maine, how do you solve the problem of Christian voter apathy, where Christians believe like people in this room, but have just kind of given up on politics?
It's a great question. First, I thought you were going to say, how do I solve a problem like Maria? But that's a separate issue. So, sorry. Ken Graves is a great pastor in Bangor. I don't know if you know Ken or not. He's phenomenal. So I just want to shout him out. Calvary Chapel, Bangor, Maine.
Bangor.
Or whatever.
Bangor.
Fine, sure. I think I said it right in my speech. I felt wrong. So Bangor, right? All right. Thank you. Okay, great. I will say, it is the home of Stephen King, so I'm not totally crazy about that. Am I right? He lives there, right?
He pretends to live there. He actually lives on Keyser Lake in a different mansion.
Really? Okay, got it. So, but Ken Graves is a phenomenal person. So look, this state, when it's not summer, it seems to have a different energy to it, and I think you guys would agree. Depression is widespread in this state. Part of it, I think, is just seasonal depression. I hate to be like overly simple, but we don't see the sun for 4 months out of the year. It does something to your soul, right? It does something to your character. But honestly, though, it does build character and build tough and grittiness, right? However, I will say this, though. This state is in more need of a Christian revival and the gospel more than almost any state that I visit in the country, right? And so, and I think a hot gospel, the truth of Jesus Christ, is so necessary here. So we need more pastors that will be unafraid to teach the gospel properly, verse by verse, chapter by chapter. But your question was about political engagement, which is that if you are a pastor of a church, and we're trying to fix this at TPUSA Faith, if you're a pastor of a church, and if you're not, for example, let's say you're a pastor in Portland, okay? And if you're not speaking out about the fact that men are in female sports, you are not doing your job as a pastor. You're failing as a pastor. And that's where a lot of you also come in. If your pastor's out, you need to challenge your pastor or find a new church. You need to find churches and tithe the churches and go to churches that reflect biblical values. The church is not supposed to be an isolated, walled off, partitioned off entity that does not come in contact with culture. Christ our Lord talked about salt and light. Salt and light change the environment that they come in contact with. And so we need pastors that are saying, hey, we're going to try to take over school boards, or at the very least, we're going to talk about what's happening in our school boards. It's wrong that this state believes in abortion, and let me tell you why. It's wrong that we have men in locker rooms, and let me tell you why. It's wrong that we're importing third worlders into Portland, and let me tell you why. So we need a whole reconsideration a whole revival of what the church actually is and what the church stands for. And the church should be the ecclesia, as it says in the scriptures. And so I think that there will be a move of God in this state. I believe it. Keep praying for it. Keep looking out for it. All it will take is a couple pastors, a couple truth tellers. Because here's the good news, everybody. Gen Z is the most Christian generation that we have seen since Billy Graham. Let me repeat that. The most popular music streamed on Apple Music is disproportionately Christian music by like Forrest Frank and by a lot of the, right, the young people would agree. This generation is going back to the divine. They're going back, and yes, Christ is king. That is exactly right. Going back to the fundamental truths that built not just civilization, but actually matter. Why is that? Because they saw the darkness and the emptiness of mask mandates, vaccine mandates, school closures, of wokeism, and they say, enough of this modernity. I don't like this false theology and this religion. I want to find the real thing. Gen Z is looking higher. They're looking up, which honestly is the greatest of all the trends happening right now in this country.
All right, the next question is, what is the biggest problem facing the conservative movement?
Yeah. Well, the biggest problem first initially will be how do we keep this energy post-Trump? And I think we're starting to figure that out. I'm a big J.D. Vance fan, by the way. I think J.D.'s amazing. Don't we love J.D., everybody? I'm a big J.D. guy. And so he's a dear, close personal friend. Is that his birthday today? I will give him a call later. Wish him a happy birthday. Thank you for reminding me. I will also say the conservative movement is going to have to decide what it believes on foreign policy. This is not necessarily happening with the over 50 crowd, but the under 50 crowd, would you agree? It is the number one thing of how we view Israel, how we view foreign conflicts. And I know there's a lot of mixed opinions on that. I tend to try to bring different viewpoints together on my show and our events to try to find some commonality. I think we should stop sending foreign aid to every single country while we're $37 trillion in debt. That's just my view. At the same time, no.
I can rip up that question. Somebody asked, should we send foreign aid?
Yeah, no, I think we should spend all foreign aid, including to Israel, every country, because we're a nation in debt. By the way, Bibi Netanyahu says we want to stop receiving aid from America because it's hurting us. So you can make an argument it's actually in Israel's, it's in their favor. But beyond that, like, we're a nation that's in debt, that doesn't have its priorities straight. So I think the younger generation believes that. But at the same time, I don't think people in this audience would tend to want us to be isolationist. I don't think necessarily people want us to have no rule. I think we want to be America first, but not America only. And look, Donald Trump, I had my concerns, I had my skepticism, but the moment he authorized it, I got behind him. And I listed out all the ways this could have went wrong. But President Trump, without losing a single U.S. troop, without no endless war, was able to fly B-2 bombers from Missouri all the way to Iran and back, take out Iran's nuclear capabilities for the time being. And honestly, that's a new doctrine that isn't like permanent war, and it's not total retreat and isolationism. And I think that's a really good way forward, that a lot of us can be, strong military against our enemies while not getting into endless permanent quagmires. So I think we have to figure that out, because there is a bubbling up collision point happening on foreign policy. But I think President Trump is demonstrating a very successful third way forward.
So this next question is about legal immigration, and it's from the author expressed some frustration with the process of bringing a spouse in through the legal immigration system. What are your thoughts on our legal immigration system? Should it be reformed? Should it be streamlined? And just generally, how should we approach legal immigration as opposed to the flood of fake asylum seekers coming over the border and up to Maine?
It's a great question. So first, we have to ask ourselves the question, what is immigration? Immigration needs to be an additive and a force multiplier to your homeland, period. It is not a charity case. It's not a feel-good thing. It needs to be, does it benefit your homeland? And legal immigration can, but currently isn't benefiting the United States. First of all, we have this H-1B scam, which is basically firing American workers so foreign tech workers can come and take computer science jobs from our own graduates. H-1B is a huge scam that is happening right now. But I'm of the opinion, and people don't always agree, I think we should shut off all immigration right now, legal and illegal, because we are a packed, crowded country. Housing prices are too high. We do not have a lack of people problem. Now, I could probably carve out a couple hundred visas a year for geniuses. I think if there's like a super genius, I think that there's a place for that, right? You know, if there is, you know, the next Yo-Yo Ma, you know, or the next, you know, person that's mapping the human genome.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, Elon, sure. Like someone that really brings value. But what I think we need to stop and reconsider is a million, so just so you know, we have 1.5 legal million people coming in the country every year. And we're a little crowded right now. Our infrastructures are being strained, our hospitals are being strained, our schools are being strained. And what we have not done is we have not paused and then reconsidered what's best for the homeland. One of my favorite presidents, and what I think is the best president of the 20th century, and it's a very provocative take, is Dwight D. Eisenhower. I like him better than Reagan. I like Reagan. The reason is he was a super nationalist. He was able to keep the country together in a post-war period and really built the superpower that we still enjoy to this day. But he had no immigration basically for 8 years. He shut off basically all immigration into the United States. Because you know what he said? It's like, look, we have a moral obligation to World War II veterans to put them first. Now, mind you, Europe was in tatters, but at the same time, think about how much leadership that took for Eisenhower to not take European refugees after World War II. So there were millions of people from Europe after Dresden, after Paris. They wanted to come to America. Eisenhower said, we'll help you rebuild your country, but we need to build our country. I think that's a really good attitude our leaders need to have. And we have far too often been led to believe, like, well, we're a nation of immigrants. Well, first, we're a nation of settlers. Maine was built by settlers, not by immigrants. When the people first came to this state, it was a barren, uncivilized land. Yes, there were indigenous people, but there were not buildings and running water and, you know, churches and town centers.
We forgot to do our land acknowledgement at the beginning of this event.
How about the land acknowledgement to the white Christians that came here 500 years ago? Thank you, by the way, for building Maine into a wonderful state. Oh, you're not allowed to say that because you're racist. Okay, it's ridiculous. So anyway, I think we shut off all immigration until we figure out what the heck is going on.
How do we approach the issue of pornography addiction in young teens in America?
Yeah, it's a major problem. And it's also a problem in our churches, by the way, and a problem with our pastors. Huge problem. I'm not quick to ban things because I'm not a leftist, so I don't love banning stuff. You can make a good argument, though, that pornography, the negatives far outweigh any of the positives. And, like, honestly, what is the positive of pornography? Like, what, someone can make that argument. I think a great way to start is to follow Texas' example. Texas, they issued an age authorization portal. You just have to prove you're 18 years old, and porn rates went down significantly. Turns out people feel a little shame, even when you're 36 years old, to put in your driver's license, go watch porn. And guess what? The birth rate went up, believe it or not. And so, again, I don't want to shame if you're struggling with pornography. I certainly have in a previous part of my life. I get it. It's very addictive. It's put in a way to try to wire the dopamine circuitry in your brain to keep on going back to the source. But at least I think we can have a national consensus that we need to make it almost impossible for a 14-year-old to be able to view graphic pornography. There's something deeply wrong. If you're 38 years old and you want to do that, I don't think we should glorify it. I don't think we should make it easy. Should we ban it? Nah, maybe, probably, but it would be difficult through the courts. But I think we can have a national rallying cry that we need to make it so hard for teenagers to get access to graphic pornography. It's ruining their dating life. It's ruining their interaction with other women. It's creating men that wall themselves off from real-life interactions. They have unreal expectations for men and for women. It's really bad. I think it's demonic at its core. It is, in Mark 7:22, it's the word porneia. It's actually where we get the word pornography from, porneia, which is sexual immorality. We are now seeing it infect the entire country and world. And I think there is a place for public policy and for laws to make it much harder and also impossible as much as we can for younger people.
So, less porn, more babies.
Exactly. I love these questions. These are great, right? These are terrific.
On Tucker the other day, you mentioned an anti-Teddy Roosevelt brand of conservative. Could you build out that argument more and weigh in on that? Just explain more of what you were talking about there.
Yeah, so someone who I really respect and who I call a friend, Glenn Beck, who I really like, he wrote a whole book basically against Teddy Roosevelt. And I'm not attacking Glenn Beck. We just have a disagreement here. Glenn Beck comes from a school of thought that Teddy Roosevelt was a progressive, and he was in some ways. I'm actually a huge Teddy Roosevelt fan. I think Teddy Roosevelt is awesome. I don't want to bore the audience on like abstract historical stuff, but Teddy Roosevelt used prudence and courage and boldness to actually, interestingly, restrain the titans that used to vacation here in the state, like the Rockefellers, from basically creating a permanent oligarchy. And you could actually argue Teddy Roosevelt saved 20th century capitalism, because what we had is a rush of people from the farms to the factories, and it was so disordered that Teddy Roosevelt brought some harmony to it that actually built the American middle class throughout the 1910s and 1920s. So I'm a huge Teddy Roosevelt fan. There are some in the Republican Party that says, no, he started the progressive movement. I would actually say the real progressive author was Woodrow Wilson, who was the president of Princeton University, governor of New Jersey, won only because of a plurality of the vote. The worst thing Teddy Roosevelt actually did was run for president in 1912 in the Bull Moose Party, because we had William Howard Taft, we had Woodrow Wilson, and Teddy Roosevelt. So Woodrow Wilson was able to become president by getting like 38%, 40% of the vote. And Woodrow Wilson was a nightmare, right?
Also a huge racist.
Well, yeah.
Like an actual racist.
Like actual racist, yeah. Right? He was a eugenicist, yeah. Right? And so Woodrow Wilson gave us the income tax, gave us the Federal Reserve Act, tried the League of Nations. We should end the Fed. My good Ron Paul fans out there, right? So all of that combined together, I think we can look to Teddy Roosevelt as a model, as someone who shed orthodoxies of both parties and did one thing: what is best for the people of the United States of America. Teddy Roosevelt gave us our national parks. Teddy Roosevelt ended wars. He was also a man's man. He was a hunter, he was a fisherman, he was an outdoorsman, and a legend. And I think we could learn a lot from him.
So you obviously spend a lot of time on college campuses, so this is a question that's right up your alley. Can the U.S. higher education system be saved? And related to that, should the Trump administration, the federal government, tax the endowments of these large elite colleges and universities?
We should absolutely tax the endowments, first and foremost. These are hedge funds with schools attached. And what we should do is we should tax the endowments and send a rebate to every blue-collar worker that had their jobs sent overseas to China over the last 40 years. Because what you might say, those two things are disconnected. No. Those universities created the people that designed the redomiciling of the factories to China. Harvard sits on $50 billion. $50 billion. They don't need it. Harvard is not doing good for the world outside of some medical research, but they're just not doing good. And so, can it be saved? No, it cannot be saved. Some colleges are great. Hillsdale College is America's greatest college. You guys should support them. They're phenomenal. Outside of Hillsdale, Liberty University, Grand Canyon University, I mean, there's a couple that are really good. We probably have 40, 50 really good schools in this country, and I could name some of them. But outside of that, guys, I don't mean to bash on some of your homegrown products here. What is it, Bowdoin? Is that how you pronounce it?
I graduated.
Say I got it wrong.
I'm a Bowdoin graduate.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Nightmare, okay? Close that place down, tax the endowments, and, turn those buildings into condominiums, okay? So here's what I will pronounce correctly. College of the Atlantic. Wow, that place is left-wing. I mean, that, because I was near there recently, and I was just researching it. I mean, so environmentalist, so left-wing. So here's the problem when it comes to higher education, is that higher education, first and foremost, the financial, I could do a whole hour-long speech on the financials. You know it. They're disconnected from reality. But the worldview themselves that they are presenting is one that is against Western values. They are not creating graduates that want to fight for this place. They're creating graduates that want to change this place. And those are two totally different things. So I love what the Trump administration is doing. I'm cheering them on to do even more. I think they should seize the endowments. They should tax them into oblivion. And I think we need less of these quote-unquote Ivy League institutions, and we need more places like Hillsdale College that love America, love God, and teach kids about liberty.
So these last two questions, I'm going to blend them together because they're kind of the same. The first is that in your Tucker podcast, you talked about baby boomers, and you and Tucker both agreed about some of the
I love baby boomers.
Well, Tucker took it a different tack on it.
I love the baby boomers in this audience. I like...
So the question is, what can the baby boomers in this audience, baby boomers broadly, do to be part of the solution?
No, it's a great question. Yeah.
And also, from a younger perspective, how does someone who is at the high school or college level go about starting a chapter of Turning Point?
I'll start with the last one. We'd love to see, how great would it be, everyone, to have like 100 high school Turning Point USA groups in Maine? Wouldn't that be amazing? So we want to make that happen. I think we have a table out there, maybe. I see a lot of our buttons, so I'm inferring maybe we do. Are you our Turning Point students around? We got to get pictures after. That's awesome. So tpusa.com, start a high school group, start a college group. Would love it. And maybe I got to come back to the University of Maine. Is that in Augusta? Is that right? Or
no?
Okay. Bangor. You guys are funny. I love it. You know, the old joke, and then I'll get to the first part of the question, is how could you tell if someone who immigrated to Texas was actually, immigrated? You ask them who won at the Alamo, and if, basically their answer. So the way you could tell if someone has successfully assimilated to Maine is if they, pronounce Bangor correctly. So the first part of your question was important. I'm actually failing to remember it.
About what can baby boomers do
okay,
now
right.
that they've ladder pulled and rigged the economy?
I hate generalizing. So of course there's exceptions to everything. Okay, there's some phenomenal baby boomers and there's some crummy ones. But generally, look, and I get the most of all the hate mail I get. I go after Somali immigrants, like the trans thing. The most angry emails I get is anytime I say anything about baby boomers. Like
they're very sensitive people.
Well, no, but no, it's not even. Forget sensitive. I know sensitive. They're so loyal to their generation. That's what I don't understand, though. Like, if someone insults millennials, I join in. Like, I don't get it. Like, yeah, of course we're terrible, right? I mean, it's like we're used to it. So I'm not here to even insult the whole generation. I'm here to say a truth, okay? A truth is this. If you are a baby boomer, you experienced the greatest uptick in American prosperity ever recorded, okay? You had the golden age. You lived the dream. You were able to buy the home, see it get more valuable, go on a couple vacations, raise a few kids, and not have to go enormously into debt, okay? That is the golden era. You bought some stocks in the 1980s and didn't buy them, they are ridiculously more valuable today in 2025, right? Even if you bought stocks in 2010, they're more valuable. You bought stocks in 2020, they're more valuable today. A generation right now, we are suffering, not me, but this generation is suffering in a way that we have not seen a generation suffer in American history in comparison to their parents. It is the first time in American history, including the Great Depression, where kids are sizably and measurably poorer and worse off than their parents. We've never seen that before. So are baby boomers to blame for that? No. Is there some baby boomer mentality that led to the lockdowns? Yes. Some baby boomers are like, shut down America because I might get sick and I don't care if my kids get harmed. That's dark stuff, everybody. That is, and I think everyone in this audience agrees, by the way, right? Everyone in this audience spoke out against it. So when I say this stuff in my show, I'm not even bashing you guys. I'm saying the boomers that were like, shut everything down because I might get COVID, but I don't care how my kids do. That's upside down generational child sacrifice, and we shouldn't put up with that. And so, look at it since 2020. If you are a boomer and you own your home definitely got more valuable since 2020. Your stocks definitely got more valuable. Your kids got poorer. And so what happens is it's economic nihilism that sets in, and cynicism, where the next generation is like, oh, All of you guys were able to experience all the upside, and now everything is they can't afford down payments on homes. They're buying groceries on credit. They're constantly in debt. So what can be done? My one thing I don't want boomers to sell their second home and give it back. I'm not into all that. I want the baby boomer generation. Some need to say they're sorry, but that's not even the whole thing. The more important thing is to say, stop telling the next generation just to work hard, and then everything will sort itself out. That used to be the case. It used to be just tell a bunch of young people, act correctly, have good character, work hard, and you can achieve the American dream. Now there needs to be a tenderness and a compassion from the baby boomer generation of, you don't have it like how I did, so let's figure it out. That alone can make a major difference, because what creates resentment, again, I'm the exception. Charlie Kirk, I've lived the American dream. I didn't go to college. I have an amazing podcast, a beautiful life, top income bracket, all that stuff. But the kids I represent, they get so jaded when their mentors say, well, just pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It was really hard when I was in the 1980s. Guys, I'm going to show you the numbers, okay? You have no idea what you're talking about. It might have been hard in the 80s. It is twice as hard as it now, okay? To make the down payment, to pay the property taxes, to keep the income. The numbers speak for themselves. So what I think is we need intergenerational compassion from boomers that don't just pull up the ladder, say, oh, we made it. Instead, looking down at the next generation, being excited they're becoming more godly, excited they're becoming more conservative, but also a helping hand generationally so that the generation I represent can experience even a fraction of the prosperity that baby boomers were able to experience the last couple of decades. Are we done? Can I say one last thing?
You want to do one more question?
Oh, yeah, sure. Or I'll just do one. Yeah, one more question or whatever. Yeah, sure.
Well, the final question was actually, how do you balance family and work life?
It's a great, so this is an exception. This is how much I love you guys. But Saturdays, I actually honor the traditional Jewish Sabbath. I'm Christian, but I like doing it better on Saturday. If you want to do Sunday, it's fine. I'm actually writing a book all about the Sabbath. It's coming out this December. It's called Stop in the Name of God, Why Honoring the Sabbath Will Change Your Life. Everybody, you should turn off your phone for one day a week and just spend time with family. It'll change your life. Get away from modernity. Get away from technology. So it says in those holy scriptures, for 6 days you shall work, for one day you shall stop and rest. I'm a big believer. This is the forgotten commandment in the 10 Commandments. We in the West, we never talk about it. We kind of just shrug our shoulders at it. We kind of forsake it to our own detriment. So I'm able to have a great family life because one day a week, I believe God tells me to stop. Again, this is the exception. I'm working today, and because I just couldn't say no to you wonderful Mainers, and I wanted to fire you all up to save your state. But I will say that that's a great preservation tool. And the thing I learned in life, again, I'm still learning a lot, you get what you prioritize. What you prioritize, so if golf matters, you get golf, right? If football matters, you get football. But if family matters, you will get time with family. And even with my crazy schedule, I give hundreds of speeches a year. I do 2 hours of radio a day. We have 1,000 employees. We have to raise $100 million a year. I still am able to get phenomenal family time because I prioritize it. In closing, everybody, I love this state. Get loud, fight like hell, and make Maine great again. Thank you so much.